Hello, citizens of the multiverse, and welcome to this episode of Comics Insider, the show where we like to break down, analyze, and discuss some of the things that work and don't work about highly anticipated comic books. Now, this week, we have the sequel to Sean Gordon Murphy's masterful take on the Batman and the quote-unquote Gothamverse in Batman Curse of the White Knight #1, which is, of course, the follow-up to his Batman White Knight, which was one of my favorite Batman books of both 2017 and 2018. Honestly, it's such a really interesting, inventive, and innovative take on the Dark Knight. So, obviously, there was a lot going into this book, and a lot of expectations that Murphy kind of has to live up to. But of course, this book is both written and drawn by Sean Gordon Murphy, colors by the amazing Matt Hollingsworth. But before we get started, I do want to let you guys know that there will be an opportunity for you to win a free digital copy of this book, so make sure to stay tuned to the middle/end of the video to find out how you can win. But if you end up enjoying this video, please don't forget to leave a like, comment down below answering the question of the day, or just letting me know your general thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. It's always good to see new faces in the community and just discuss the things that we love about comics, man, because it is just something else. Batman Curse of the White Knight #1 opens up in the Arkham Manor, circa 1685, amidst a conflict between a colonial ancestor of the Wayne family and a man named Laffy, who we are led to kind of assume might be an Arkham himself. But he's holding a member of what I can only assume to be of the Order of St. Dumas hostage. While holding his hostage, Laffy ends up claiming that Gotham is irrevocably cursed as he's captured and killed by the Lord Wayne. And that's the last we see of him, assumed to be dead. In the present, the Crown Prince of Crime is freed by the warden of the now Arkham Asylum. So we don't quite get here why the warden freed him, but the Joker's plan is to enact his final crime to end all crimes, and he's aiming to somehow get one over on both Batman and his Jack Napier persona. And so Jack Napier on the surface level is this homage to the Batman 1989 film, but in the book, Jack Napier was essentially the Joker's sane persona after being treated with a number of different drugs. But if you haven't read White Knight, again, this book is really built upon the grounds set up in that one, so I'd highly suggest you go read it, if not just for the fact that it's an awesome book. Joker procures a bag from his old cell at the Arkham Asylum, claiming that its contents contain Gotham's biggest secret. And not only is its biggest secret, but its darkest one as well, and it stems from the beginning of the city and could signify the end of it. And it's apparently something only he knows about. So he ends up stabbing the warden to cover his tracks as we transition to Bruce Wayne at the manor. Now again, more spoilers for White Knight #1, but this is sometime after the death of his surrogate father, Alfred, who, we all know and love, the boy. But Bruce finally reads Alfred's final words, and the letter by Alfred really puts on display Alfred's all-encompassing love, connection, and awareness of Bruce just as a whole. And I just think that Murphy really well captures Alfred's voice, and it's even more important being the last thing we see from him, assumedly. And I will point out that in the panel with Bruce standing by light, his shadow is actually in the shape of Batman, which I absolutely love. I think that's such a cool nod to the Batman animated series. I remember in Batman Beyond, there was one conversation Bruce has with Terry where Bruce knew that someone was trying to take over his mind because he had referred to Bruce as Bruce, and Bruce kind of smiles at Terry and says, "That's not what I call myself." So I thought that might have been a cool little nod. Not sure. I know Murphy is a huge fan of the animated series. Either way, I really dug it because it's highly indicative of this Batman. So going back to the letter, Alfred reassures Bruce that his family is his strength, and his tendency to isolate himself when things get tough is going to be his downfall. So that's something that this universe's Bruce, and I think even the main continuity's Bruce, needs to work on. Tying into the opening scene in the book, though, Alfred leads Bruce to a hidden journal of his ancestor Edmund Wayne, who was the Wayne character that we met at the beginning of the book. Now, if you pay close attention, on the front of the journal, it's dated 1685, which again was the same year as the scene from the opener. Bruce suits up to go investigate the Joker's breakout with Commissioner Jim Gordon, and by analyzing the forensics of the faux crime scene, Bruce deduces that not only was the breakout a setup, but it's possible that the Warden has been a consistent contributor to Arkham's Breakouts as a means to profit from the Batman Devastation Fund introduced in White Knight, which is essentially this way for the elite of Gotham to invest in property after it's been pretty much destroyed by Batman fighting crime for a super low price. So it touches on themes of elitism and obviously oppression, which go far deeper in the original White Knight. I will preface this by saying that this first issue so far isn't nearly as topically charged as the first White Knight, which is one of my favorite things about it, but I think that this one makes up in a couple other ways. Batman and Gordon end up making their way down to Joker's old cell, unearthing a secret passageway leading to the bones of Laffy Arkham, the assailant that we had seen fall and killed at the beginning of the book. And so the Dark Knight brings his findings back to the cave for analysis, leading to a heated conversation between himself and Nightwing, and it's all done in the background of an astounding splash image of Murphy's Batcave. After the fallout of White Knight, Bruce expresses that the Joker's sane alter ego, Jack Napier, was right regarding the unintended consequences of Batman. As a result, he wants to come clean to the city and reveal his identity to them. But it's really because he feels like his time as Batman might be coming to a close. And we're keyed into Bruce's disappointment in himself, just for not realizing the more veiled ramifications of his war on crime, which I think is a really, really unique perspective. And again, I think said intended consequences pertaining to the Gotham Devastation Fund and other things shown in White Knight are really, really fresh to the character and to the mythos. I think Murphy just establishes something that is entirely different, but also a love letter to the Batman that we know and love. And I can really, really appreciate that and continue to see that throughout Curse of the White Knight as I did in the original White Knight. Now we cut to the introduction of the Murphy versus Jean-Paul Valley. Based on the dialogue that he's having with a doctor and an arm tattoo, we're led to believe that his involvement with the Order of St. Dumas might stem from military service, as do his psychological breaks might be PTSD or some other form of psychological illness, but I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. After being informed of a tragic diagnosis that I'm not going to reveal here because you guys should be reading this book, something triggers Jean-Paul Valley's psychological break, and it causes him to stumble naked into the hospital's chapel and collapse. Afterwards, we end up returning to Batman as he explains his findings to Batgirl, Barbara Gordon. Barbara's dialogue suggests a famed myth surrounding the mysterious Lafayette Arkham that we've really been seeing a lot of this plot beginning to unravel around. Interestingly enough, we learn that the bones of Lafayette Arkham are the same age as Edmund Wayne's notebook, found in Alfred's old room, and Edmund was actually the first of the Wayne lineage to ever set foot in Gotham. And so obviously this is going to be really important to the legacy of Bruce's family, and maybe it ties into some of the reveals that we had seen in White Knight about his father, but again, go read that book if you're not aware of that. Between finding the bones near Joker's cell and the journal, Batman realizes that whatever Joker's plan is, it goes all the way back to the infancy of Gotham, involving his family. As this new outing into DC's Black Label line closes, we pick back up with Jean-Paul cleaning the church from his mishap earlier on. The Joker appears, and his plan truly commences, disguising his voice as Jean-Paul's father and referring to him as the rightful heir of Gotham. He hands Jean-Paul the Order's flaming sword and signifies the birth of Azrael, closing out this book. Overall, I thought Murphy did a very solid job returning to his continuity for Batman. I think that there was obviously a lot going into this and a lot of really high expectations, but it is also not entirely the same tonally and content-wise from White Knight. In fact, I think it's quite different, although it does build on and blend from some of the things that stemmed from the original White Knight. I just think that it does a solid job taking a lot of those character beats and story beats from White Knight and bringing them into this new context of sorts. It's also a lot more plot driven versus White Knight. White Knight to me seemed a little bit more topically charged. Obviously did have a solid plot, but the focus was the topical charging, the sociological comments that Murphy had to make on the world and perhaps government, so on and so forth. This is a little bit less of that. Those things are still there, in subtle notes. But this book is aiming for something kind of different. And it's not a bad thing at all. Although the sociologically charged content of the original White Knight was something that I loved about it, this story kind of accomplishes things so far that I didn't see as much in the other one. So it kind of maintains this really interesting balance between this and the original. What I really like here is that Murphy's able to set up the plot from the get-go, and it feels really clear and concise all throughout. It makes Gotham feel so much more ominous and raises the relevance and the stakes of the city's past in the future and the present, obviously. One important thing when writing Batman is realizing that Gotham in and of itself is its own character, and providing this history and new context behind Gotham City just provides such a deep layer to ground this story in. So I really, really like that. Just like White Knight, Murphy knows these characters. The characterization of each and every single one of the cast is spot on, and in fact, I don't quite want to say it's better, just because the results of the previous White Knight have kind of helped to establish a Batman that we're a little bit more familiar with, just in terms of attitude and thought process. You know what I'm saying? When we meet him in the original White Knight, there is a series of events that kind of leads up to him being kind of grittier, more closed off, a little bit more irrational than normal. So because of that, we're kind of getting back to a more level-headed Batman. And so I don't want to necessarily say it's better characterization, but it is a little bit more closely aligned to the Batman that we know and love. But with that being said, the dialogue felt very real, appropriate to each character, and effective. And so I alluded to this a second ago, but particularly when he writes Batman, he really leans into how he's been humanized by the events of White Knight. And he's kind of back to being the symbol of justice we know him to be. Murphy, again, is not afraid to show that Batman is super capable, but also flawed. And Batman is starting to acknowledging those flaws, and I think that will just kind of prove to be some really solid development for Batman moving forward in this story. And again, it does play nicely with what we've seen in the original White Knight. If I had to really look at it, I feel like we're seeing some themes of growth, acceptance, but we'll see how more of that kind of pans out. But certainly surrounding the Caped Crusader, it is a lot of that growth and acceptance thematic, which I'm really, really digging. Moving to other characters, I thought that his interpretation of Jean-Paul Valley was really fresh, while also kind of paying respect to the original. It didn't stray so far that I didn't recognize the character, but it just felt new and interesting. And I think that sometimes with characters that just don't get a heck of a lot of love, that can be super difficult to do. So kudos to Murphy, man. I really dig where I think we're going to be going with Azrael, and I like what you've presented to us so far. In terms of the plotting of this book, we've been presented with a lot of really great evocative questions to ask ourselves, and it's not one of those things where they're questions that are doubting the legitimacy of the book. They're questions that the plot is forcing us to ask, because we want to know what's going to happen next. We want to know some of the background surrounding characters and their actions and such. So he's getting us to ask all the right questions, I think, and hopefully more of those things will be answered moving forward in the series. But of course, first and foremost, Sean Gordon Murphy, his original claim to fame was his art, and in this book it continues to be absolutely A1. He brings it, man. Murphy absolutely brings it, from shots to panel layouts and composition to the expression of the characters, and he just establishes such a striking aesthetic to the overall book. There's something so particular about the way his art in every single one of those capacities just evokes a particular flavor of Gotham and Batman, and I really, really like it. At the end of the day, I am just left interested. I am so interested, and I've read this book a second time, and I liked it even more the second time. I like that we're playing with Gotham's history, and not to go so far off track, I love Court of Owls, and one of the things I like about the Court of Owls is that it's so seated in something from Batman's past and even far beyond that, and it makes it a little bit more difficult for him to deal with. So if Murphy can really pull off what he's setting up here, like he did in White Knight, I think we're in for a really great ride. If I had to score this book, honestly, again, I liked it more the second time I read it. So I think I would give it a 9.3. It was very good. It was very, very good. And usually, anywhere from, a 9 to a 10 are just such tiny nitpicks. Of course, you guys have to pick up this book. If you haven't read White Knight, go buy that trade. Go pick up these single issues as they're coming out, because I swear you are going to run through that book. It is so solid, one of my favorites. And this story, while again being very different and establishing itself as something that is not directly a continuation from the plot of White Knight, builds on the things that it establishes and goes in a different direction, and I really, really enjoy that. Sean Gordon Murphy, Matt Hollingsworth, man, absolutely killing it. If I were to give one small critique, is that when it comes to the lettering, we didn't get that kind of spooky Joker font text, but really, if that's my biggest critique of the book, you're doing something right. So if you guys haven't already, make sure you go pick up Batman Curse of the White Knight #1, and if you want to make sure to enter into win a free copy of this book, that's right, a free copy of Black Label's Batman Curse of the White Knight #1, all you have to do is like this video, subscribe down below to the channel, and comment down below letting me know, where do you think this story is going to be going from here? Do you think we're going to be tying in a little bit more to the previous White Knight? Do you think we're going to kind of keep going in another direction? Whatever it is, let me know down in the comments below. And as long as this video can hit 15 likes in the first 3 days, I'll be able to give you guys a chance to win that free copy of the book, and that's all courtesy of AJ's Comics. Make sure to go check them out. You can find the link to their website in the description below, as well as both their Twitter and my Twitter, where you can interact with us on a regular basis, talk comics, and get more chances to win some free giveaways. They're an absolutely awesome shop, and if you subscribe to a pull list through them, you get 10% off everything in the store. They'll mail you your comics, and if you wait for your shipment to be $100 or more, it's absolutely free anywhere in the United States to any sort of armed force base overseas. And if that happens to be you and that's your situation, thanks so much for your service. But at the end of the day, awesome store. That's where I choose to spend pretty much all my money. So make sure to go check them out. But again, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys in the next video from Dark Knight Nation.